Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Garden Girls podcast. We are Meg, Dagny, and Amy, if you're new here. And today we're going to be talking about seed saving, why it's so important, and why we love doing it, and also our favorite varieties to save seeds from. So, Dagny, talk to us a little bit about why you find seed saving so important.
Yeah, as you guys know, gardening can be a very crazy expensive hobby if we let it. It's very easy for things to get out of control fast, but it can also be very budget friendly depending on what strategies you choose. And seed saving is a huge part of that, since it's one main way that you can control where your seeds come from. And it's nice because you can also buy a really fancy, expensive seed one year as an investment, and then potentially, depending on what kind of seed it is, just save seed from that plant for the following year so you don't have to rebuy it again. There's also just something really empowering about it. You get to take seeds all the way through their entire life cycle. And for me, at least, that makes me feel more connected to the plants, to nature, to my garden. And you kind of get to have plant grandbabies, right? You get to be like, this is the third son of the third son. Have a whole family tree for your garden, which is really exciting. And you also get to pick and choose the best plants so you can improve variety over time.
I love that. Just feeling like you have all these little babies that you've raised over the years and just continuing on the line. That's one of the most fun things about gardening, I think.
It's a whole legacy, yeah. What about you, Meg?
I agree with everything that you said, Dagny. It's an important practice to learn how to do for various reasons. Obviously, for just sustainability, sourcing things yourself, creating things yourself, and not having to buy them from other places. But then also learning how to, I'm not like a prepper. I'm not much of a prepper, but just learning that knowledge of how to, if you ever need to save seeds, then you at least know how. One thing I do want to mention is hybridization because a lot of people think that they can grow like 5 different varieties of tomatoes in their backyard garden, and they think that they can save seeds from a tomato with it being open pollinated, and that it's going to breed true and be the exact same tomato that they grew the past year, which is probably not how that's gonna work because all of these insects, they're jumping from plant to plant, they're bringing pollen from other varieties, and those things are cross-pollinating, which can be fun if you're into that. I am into that. I love trying to cross-pollinate, trying to come up with different hybrids and stuff. I just came up with this squash hybrid that I'm growing in my garden this year. So it can be fun. It can also be disappointing because not every cross or every hybridization is going to make a desirable fruit the next year. So you have to play around with it. Seeing as it goes from year to year, it can take quite a while to do things like that. So I think if you are growing different varieties of things and you want to save seeds from them, it's also important to know how to do a closed pollination type of thing where you maybe put like an organza bag over the flower so that they can't get to it. And then you pollinate it yourself with pollen that you know is the same. And then you save the seeds from that specific one that you pollinated. It's good to know all of this information and gain knowledge on how to do things like that. For instance, for me, I don't really save seeds from things that I know can cross pollinate, like tomatoes and peppers and things like that. I really only save seeds from things that I know I'm only planting one variety of, or if I don't mind them cross pollinating. Because, like I said, I've had success with the squash, but I did not have success with the tomatoes. I think tomatoes are just a little bit more finicky. I did save seeds from a tomato one year and I regrew it the next year, and they were gross tomatoes. They were so tasteless. They literally tasted like water. They looked the same as the previous year. So I think it was mortgage lifter tomatoes. I saved seeds from those. And this was like my first year of gardening. It was the first time I ever saved tomato seeds, but then I replanted those the next year. They were just tasteless. I didn't get what I wanted out of that. So I gave up on the tomatoes. But like flowers, I love saving seeds from flowers and coming up with all of these crazy different colors and different varieties. If you've ever played Animal Crossing, it's like Animal Crossing in real life. It's just important when you're learning how to save seeds to just keep hybridization and cross-pollination in mind. Just be very mindful about it. Very demure. You see how I'm saving these seeds and if they might be cross-pollinated? Very knowledgeable. What about you, Amy?
Love saving seeds. I think it's just such a nice full circle kind of practice to do in the garden. I think it's just so nice to have a little collection of seeds that you've saved yourself from your garden. It's like when you make things from scratch when you're cooking, you're like saving or planting seeds from scratch in a way. It's like the full process. Also, it's nice to have those to swap with people, give to people as gifts. And I also go to like community seed swaps. So it's always great to have some of your own homegrown seeds on hand to bring with you there so that you can also get some fun seeds from other people. Also, saving seeds from your own garden is a really nice way to get those seeds adapted to your own soil and microclimate over time. Like the more you save seeds from your own plants, the more you're going to have plants that are adapted to those really specific conditions that can vary quite a lot from like garden to garden.
Yeah, I like how you can have community with seed savings too, because you go to these seed swaps and you're meeting new people and like you're swapping seeds. Maybe you're bringing things that other people don't have, and then you're leaving with things that you didn't have before. So it's a really cool aspect of saving seeds.
Yeah. And with those seeds, you can get information from people and they'll tell you like how to
Mhm.
grow them or their little tips and things. And I think that's the case with like heirloom seeds as well. It feels like there's so much history and information passed down through them. And I actually have this book, which I really recommend. I'll show it for anyone who's watching. It's so good. It's called The Seed Detective and it's by Adam Alexander. And it's this guy who goes around the world to like market and things. And he's like, oh, those beans look really interesting. And he'll ask the person about them. And it turns out they're like hundreds and hundreds of years old beans that have been passed down through generations. And then he brings them back to the UK and he grows them and saves the seeds. I think it's a really cool way to preserve really old seeds and all that knowledge and history.
I think it's so fun to learn the history and like the fun little quirky stories that are behind some seeds. Like I was talking about the mortgage lifter tomato. So the story behind that, it's called mortgage lifter because this guy was growing this variety and apparently he grew enough tomatoes to sell to pay off his mortgage.
Wow.
I don't know if that how true that really is. I don't know because that you would have to be growing a lot of tomatoes. But this also was back in the day when mortgages were not like they are today. So
That's true. It's probably £5, $5.
yes, like maybe it's true, but I just think that the funny little quirky stories like that are really cool. And then I also love the stories of like where these seeds came from. I love learning about indigenous communities and the seeds that they have been nurturing for centuries. And it's just really cool that something as simple as a seed have such a rich history like that.
For sure. Well, also another recommendation. If anyone hasn't watched the documentary Seed, the Untold Story, you have to watch that. But it gets pretty dark and heavy, but it's so good.
Oh, I wanna watch that just has such an alluring title,
You
like,
need to.
I wanna watch
It has a
that.
lot more about like indigenous communities and also like the trademarking of seeds and all that kind of sketchy stuff.
I bet there are some dark secrets behind the world of seeds, some dark history for sure.
Definitely.
If we're doing book recommendations, I can't recommend this one because I haven't finished it, but I'm currently in the middle of Northwoods by Daniel Mason. And the whole intro of the book, this isn't really a spoiler, is basically this guy wants to start like an apple orchard. And they intro the book by talking about how he came across the apple tree that he decided to save the grafts from. This guy went into this woman's house, he attacks her, and then she kills him and buries him in the garden. And he had eaten an apple and eaten the core and the seeds. And so this whole thing is that this apple tree grew out of his rib cage, his corpse in the ground. I'm like, how do writers think of this stuff? It's wild. So then this guy comes and he like thinks it's the best apple in the world. So morbid kind of seed saving weird plant thing that I'm reading.
Wait, is like a fiction?
Oh,
Yes,
thank God.
yeah.
Okay,
I read a lot of fiction.
okay, I do too.
No, it's not real. That would be really scary. Although, but you have to think like how many people were buried before the time of non-biodegradable coffins with food in their stomachs and that ended up sprouting somehow. And I don't know how realistic that is. Stomach acid probably damages things and whatever before it has a chance to germinate. But it's gotta have happened somewhere in a mammal, like a small animal like
That's the
that.
dream, surely, to grow into an apple tree.
I'm just gonna eat a bunch of seeds before I die and then hope that like they plant me.
I love the new, like, tree pod things that they have. We're getting
Yeah,
really
yeah.
morbid here, but it is almost
We are.
Halloween, so it's September, so happy Halloween. But the new, like, little tree pods, like, you can be buried in a I don't even know what it is. It's some type of pod, but you basically feed the tree, like your fertilizer for the tree.
They have mycelium ones too that decompose you really fast. It's like a mycelium casket.
I don't think I've heard of the tree pods, but I've seen like cardboard boxes that you can get buried in the forest. Which sounds kind of like just stuck them in a cardboard box.
You don't need a pod, just put me in a cardboard box.
Any Amazon box will do.
No, I don't, not an Amazon box. We can't. Jeff Bezos, he runs too much of our life. He can't run our death
Oh
too.
God.
Really took a turn there.
What are your favorite seeds to save from the garden?
I've just started to experiment with this a little bit more this year. I really only saved like a few things last year, to be honest. But I actually saw, Meg, in one of your YouTube videos that you were just chaos sowing dill like straight from the plant. I was like, oh my God, why am I not doing this? So I started doing it and it just feels like feral for some reason. I'm not even saving this seed. I'm just immediately planting it. I love that. And dill has these like really beautiful like seed pods. Of course, it's like the shape of the dill flower. It's a really fun sensory experience to just crumble them up wherever you are and replant them. So thank you for the inspiration on
You're
that.
welcome. That is one of my absolute favorite things to do is just like if it's the time to replant, like right now you can get in a fall harvest of dill. So your summer dill's flowered, it's gone to seed, and you still have time for fall. Why not just
Absolutely. I'm also doing that with the lettuce this year because I let a bunch of lettuce go to seed. I think lettuce is so pretty. I have some butter crunch, I think it is, that's gone to seed right now. And it has these beautiful, delicate little yellow flowers on it before it actually goes to seed. It's a really cool plant. You let these things go to seed, they get really tall. They add so much interest and height to the garden that isn't normally there. Let your lettuce go to seed. I think it totally is worth it. Another one that I'll let go to seed in the garden is snapdragons, which you already alluded to, Meg. But I love how the seed pods look like little skulls. Again, we're back to spooky season. So if you look at them closely, like they really do look like skulls and it's just fun. And then for another flower, I have calendula. Calendula seeds just look so alien to me and I love sprinkling them everywhere. Calendula really belongs in the garden. It is such a good companion plant. Everything loves it. So I don't care where it lands. I will chuck that seed anywhere. And I also really like to save bean seeds because they're just so satisfying to like crunch open. And it's just, again, like a sensory experience for me. I love saving my provider green bean seeds. Provider green beans do the best for me out of any green beans. They're so productive. And I also have some wax beans that I'm doing this year that I'll be saving seeds from. How about you, Meg?
yeah, like you were saying, the cycle with the dill. I love anything that I can make a cycle out of in the garden. One of my favorite examples is cilantro. We'll plant cilantro from seed in the fall, and then it will grow all fall and all winter for me. It'll overwinter here for me in North Carolina. And then in the spring, it'll start flowering and it'll go to seed. And those seeds will be ready to harvest in like late summer. And then I'll just take those seeds and then I'll just replant them right into the garden the next fall. So it's like this continuous cycle because cilantro is not really a perennial. But if you get these kind of like seed cycles going on in your garden, it can just save work for you. Like you just are taking things off of your plate because your garden is just doing the seed saving for you. You don't have to store them away. It's just like a cycle that's going on. So cilantro is my favorite. But besides that, I love squash and pumpkins. Like I was saying earlier, I love to hybridize them. And I love hybrid seeds because hybrid seeds can be stronger and more resilient to, and they can adapt to your environment and become more resistant to your pest pressures and your weather issues that you have in your environment. I really love hybrid seeds. I love my heirlooms, but if there's something that I've grown from heirloom that I've really struggled with growing in my environment, which can be harsh sometimes, then I'll usually turn to hybrids because seed companies and people around the world try to hybridize plants to make them more resilient to harsher weather conditions and like pest pressures and stuff, which we have a lot of here in the South. It's really challenging to grow down here. So the hybrids usually work really well for me. And I'll try to hybridize in my own garden, in my own environment, just to make things easier for myself with growing for the next year. Sunflowers are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. But again, I also try to make a cycle with sunflowers. This year, I didn't plant like a single sunflower. I think I only planted my mammoths, my 2 mammoths, but the rest of my garden was full of sunflowers and I didn't even have to plant them. I don't even collect the seeds. I just leave them and they'll fall to the ground, or the birds, when they're eating the seeds, they will help me plant them and then they'll come back as volunteers the next year. I love a good volunteer in the garden. I love volunteers all throughout my garden. So that's like how I keep a cycle with the sunflowers as well. Same with beans. I like to just leave rotting things in my garden so that I have lots of volunteers. That's the moral of the story. And I just leave things as they are. I'll leave things to rot. It doesn't look pretty, but I know that I'm like keeping my future garden in mind. So I'll leave a lot of the beans to dry up and just disintegrate into the soil. They'll come back the next year. And I didn't have to plant any of my beans this year either. My goal is to make my garden as autopilot as possible. Like, even if I have something rotting, like a tomato or something, I'll literally just throw it in a garden bed, just let it rot. I don't even put it in the compost, just throw it in a garden bed because I know that those seeds will go dormant over the winter, then they'll pop back up in the spring. And it could be a climate thing. We're pretty mild climate, so I do probably have a lot more volunteers than some people. So those are my favorite seeds to save and how I get like these little cycles going in my garden.
I love this because it's opening up my eyes to the fact that like seed saving doesn't have to be an active act. It can be
Right.
passive. Like it can be just letting things self seed, which is so much less intimidating for people to just let nature run its course and see what
Yeah, it's
happens.
like the soil saves the seeds for you. You have a whole
Yes.
bank of seeds in the soil and they'll just come up whenever they're ready, which is so cool.
Right, because like, nature doesn't have a seed box. Like, she's not just saving seeds for the next year, she's just letting things reseed themselves as they may, and that's what I try to emulate in my garden. Because again, I just want it to be on autopilot. I wanna be more of, like, an observer and then do my thing when necessary, and I love it. I love all the volunteers. Like, watching the volunteers pop up the next year is so exciting. You have no idea what they are, but you know that they're like, I've grown to notice that's a sunflower seedling or that's a bean seedling, and it's really important to know what your seedlings look like too. I'll leave them, and I've been able to distinguish between plants and seed or weeds now. Yeah, it's just really cool to see what comes up and what's it going to be, what's it going to look like, what's it going to taste like. It just makes gardening a lot more exciting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a little surprise when you don't know what's going to come
Yes.
up, where it's going to come up. And yeah, I think you're right. You do need to know what your seedlings look like so you don't accidentally weed them out or whatever.
What about you, Amy?
One of my favorite things to save seeds from is actually tomatoes, because I was under the impression that it was unlikely that tomatoes cross because they self pollinate. But from what you were saying, Meg, it sounds like maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've never had them cross before. I've saved seeds from tomatoes quite a lot and they've always come true to plant that I saved them from.
I think it is less likely because, like you said, they're self-fertile and all of the parts are right there, but it can happen, especially if you have a lot of bee activity and the tomato plants are like very close together. I'll plant 5 varieties right next to each other. But yeah, I don't know. It could have been a fluke with me.
I'm totally okay with them crossing, to be honest. I love all of the varieties that I grow, and to have a mix of them could be interesting. And you can't necessarily buy that cross, so it's fun to try it. So I hope that happens in a way. So yeah, tomatoes are really easy to save seeds from as well. You just cut them open, and some people will just dry them on a paper towel, but the little like jelly coating can make it more difficult for the seeds to germinate. But once you put it in soil, it's probably gonna rot away anyway. So you can just save them that way. But I prefer to do it the way where you put the seeds into a little bit of water and kind of ferment them, and then it cleans off really nicely. And then they store for a lot longer that way because they're a lot cleaner and drier. Also love saving peas for the same reason as Dagny loves saving beans, because they're all crinkly and you can just pop them open, and it's so easy to fill up a whole bag with them because they're so much bigger as well. So it's quite satisfying. And also I grow a lot of mange too and sugar sap, and I always forget to harvest them on time. And then they get a little bit of just like, whatever, I'll leave them a bit longer until they dry out, and then I'll just save the seeds from them. Also love growing anything that you can grow microgreens from, because when I'm growing microgreens, I feel like guilty that it's not going to grow into a full plant. I feel like it's a little bit of a waste of seeds when you're buying them. I think it can get expensive, but if you're saving your own, then it's free. So peas again for like pea shoots. I also love any type of seed that you can use in the kitchen as a seed or as a spice. so that you can save a load of the seeds to sow next year, but also you can use them in cooking if you want to as well. It's like multi-purpose. So with that, I would say fennel. I've got some like huge, basically 3 meter tall fennel plants growing at the moment, which just look beautiful. And the shape of the flowers is really great for predatory wasps and other beneficial insects like that. So it's great to have those around. And also the flowers are great for cooking. And I love using the seed in pickles and things like that as well. Also coriander, because it always just bulks anyway. So you might as well use the seeds, and you can use those in cooking too. And you can use them before they even go brown. So coriander seeds are very useful. Oh, sorry, cilantro for Americans.
It's so weird because we call the seeds coriander seeds, but we call the leaves cilantro,
Okay.
or like the entire plant cilantro.
Yeah, this is America.
I think it comes from like the Mexican influence, because I think like in Spanish it's cilantro, and they use that in a lot of their cooking. Like we obviously have a huge Spanish influence here, so I think that's why we call the leaves cilantro. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but then the seeds coriander, I don't know.
That makes sense.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
that checks out. I love saving easy seeds from flowers and things like foxgloves. You get like this whole stick covered in seed pods that you can literally just pick up and shake, and like a little rattle, and you'll have seed everywhere, and they grow so easily. So they're another one of my favorite.
I was going to ask you two, how are you storing these seeds? Because I find that what happens is I'm like, I'm going to dry these. And then I like leave them in a little safe spot. And then I just have a million little safe spots where I've stored seeds and nothing is where it should be. And it's a mess.
You guys, I have something so funny. Hold on, I have to go and get it.
Where's she going?
I had a friend come over the other day, and I'm like obsessed with tiny little boxes. Like I love tiny little things like this. And I had a friend come
Oh.
over the other day, and she was like, "What's in here?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe some rings or something." There's seeds in here. So I don't even know what kind of seeds they are. There's some kind of bean or something. She was like, "I was expecting anything but random seeds in here." And I was just like, "I don't know."
I would expect nothing less from you, Meg.
No, so I did get this really cool, I don't even have it. It's out in the greenhouse. I'll have to put a picture up somewhere. But this wooden case that the top slides off and there's all these circular holes and these tiny glass vials with cork lids. So it's very witchy. Very
Love
witchy.
that.
You can get it on Etsy and it's super cute. You can't store like a ton of seeds in each vial, but I really don't have that many. Like it fits like a packet's worth unless you're talking about like beans or peas or things like that. So it's really cute, but it's fun. But I still, even with this system, I still, when I'm like letting them dry or whatever, they end up everywhere. Like they're just all over the
I
place.
literally have a paper towel with a load of chili seeds on behind me, because I'm like, I'll
Yeah.
put that in an envelope at some point, and then I still haven't done it
It's a
yet.
lot.
Same. I'm staring at a paper towel full of pumpkin seeds right now.
So we all just have paper towels everywhere.
Yeah, I think one of the most fun things to do. So, like, my neighbor, she comes over and she's Filipina, and she's actually taught me this because I'd never done this before. I had always like meticulously saved the seeds, but she would come over and she'd be like, "What kind of flower is this? Can I have the head?" I'm like, "Sure." And she'll just bring a paper bag and she'll just pinch off all of these flower heads and just put them in the paper bag. And I'm like, what are you gonna do with that? And she's like, "I'll just keep them in here until spring." And then, like, when
Oh,
spring comes, she'll just take the seeds out then. So I started doing that with my flowers, especially the bigger flowers with the bigger heads, like zinnias, sunflower, things that I don't want to meticulously take all of the seeds out of. Just store them in a paper bag until spring.
so smart.
Yeah, it's fun.
I love
You can
that.
shake the bag too if you really want to agitate the seeds, like in the spring to get all the seeds out. You just shake the bag really hard and all the seeds are out. And then you just take out all the other plant matter, like the dried up plant matter.
That's genius.
Yes, it's
And
so
yeah.
easy for zinnias, especially.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap that up there for today, but you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and let us know what your favorite seeds are to save. We will see you next time. Thanks for listening.